Hello dear friends, I'm Marina from marstars.net, and today I would like to share with you how you can make predictions using transits and basically how this method works, what you need to know, whether you're just starting with astrology or even if you have some experience, you will find valuable information. So first of all, let me tell you that this method is very popular. Basically, that's the most popular method. And honestly, I haven't met an astrologer who doesn't use this method. There are other methods where there might be discussions, some people use it, others don't want to use them, but with the transits, everyone agrees that they are important. They are interesting, and the truth is that very often they bring something visible. So they are related to something concrete which is happening, something which is measurable and visible. So it's not only about psychological things or how we experience them on an inner level, but also about concrete circumstances and events. So what's the general idea of this method? Basically, we are exploring whether the transiting planets, or it means how the planets are positioned in the skies today or during the current period, and are those planets triggering our natal planets in some way. Those type of connections are called aspects. So if certain transiting planet is making an aspect with our birth planet, it means that it will bring some kind of impact for us. And there are a few things that we need to analyze here. First of all, which is the transiting planet? What's the energy that it brings? That's the most important question. So each of the 10 planets that astrology works with can make an aspect with your natal planets, but they are not equally important. First of all, if the transit sun is making an aspect with your natal planet, it can bring you more energy, it can bring you optimism, or it can bring some kind of positive opportunities, but not life-changing events. For example, if the moon makes aspect with your natal planets, then this would be a very short-lasting transit which can affect you in about your mood or can bring some kind of emotions, but those are some temporary events. Mercury, if the transit Mercury triggers your birth chart or a natal planet in the chart, it can bring you some new contacts or new ideas, or in some cases opportunity to learn or to travel. If the transit Venus makes aspect with your natal planets, it can bring you joy and happiness and love and some kind of positive changes. If Mars triggers your natal chart, it can bring you more masculine energy, more active, dynamic energy, can motivate you more, but also in some cases can bring confrontations and struggles. If the transit Jupiter makes aspect with any of your natal planets, it can bring you abundance and growth or some new opportunities or desire to achieve, to expand and to learn more. If the transit Saturn triggers your natal planets, it can bring you some kind of challenges, it can bring you hard work, or also it can bring you stability and stable growth in case that you have deserved it. If the transit Uranus makes aspect with your natal planets, it can bring you changes, it can bring some kind of stress and surprises, but also liberation. If the transit Neptune makes aspect with your natal planets, it can increase your imagination and creativity, but also can bring some kind of confusion or some kind of unrealistic expectations. And if the transit Pluto triggers your planets, it can bring transformational processes, some really deep and intense changes, and also crisis. And of course, each of those aspects will last for a different time depending on the transiting planet. And of course, the duration of those transits affects also how important this period or this event can be in your life. And the slowest planets, those which have really long-lasting transits, they are the ones which bring the most intense changes. Basically, these are the outer planets. The most significant changes are brought by Pluto. The aspects of Pluto can last between 2 and 3 years on and off because of the retrogradness of the planet. Also, Neptune, 2 or 3 years on and off again. Uranus, approximately 2 years on and off. So basically, these are the life-changing transits. The social planets, Jupiter and Saturn, can affect you for approximately a couple of months, again on and off, depending on the retrograde motion. With the other planets, the personal planets, we are talking about really short-lasting influences. For example, the moon will trigger you only for a couple of hours, and the sun, Mercury, and Mars, and Venus will affect you for a couple of days. So we can understand that a transit which lasts for only a couple of days is not a life-changing transit. Even if this is Mars, even if it brings some kind of confrontations or tension or struggles, these are not life-changing events. And on the other hand, if we talk about transits from Pluto, these are really, really important influences for us. So the next question is, which life area will be affected? So how you can understand which life areas will be triggered? First of all, you need to analyze which is the planet in your chart which receives the aspect from the transiting planet. The nature of this planet will show you one area which might be affected in your life. For example, if your natal sun is triggered, then it means that we are talking about some personal changes, or in the horoscope of a woman, this may represent male figures. So basically more personal changes. For example, if the natal moon is triggered, then this could affect your family, your mother, your children, your home. With Mercury, we talk about mostly friendships and contacts and communication and knowledge and so on. So the first thing is to analyze the planet which receives the aspect, or the natal planet. Then we have to find out in which house this planet is positioned in our chart, and also which are the houses which are ruled by this planet. All of that information will show us which life areas will be affected. So let me give you an example here. Let's say that the transit Jupiter is making conjunction with your natal Mercury in 6th house, and Mercury also rules your 3rd house in the birth chart. So how we can interpret that? First of all, Jupiter in 6th house may bring some great opportunities for expansion or for growth in terms of your work. They can be related to some new contacts or opportunities to communicate with other people, which is defined basically by the fact that we are talking about Mercury and the fact that the planet rules your 3rd house. So you can have expansion in terms of work, new opportunities to create new contacts, and maybe even to travel. So we are including all of that information. Or let's take another example. Let's say that the transit Saturn makes conjunction with your natal Uranus, which is positioned in 5th house, and Uranus also rules 4th house in your natal chart. So how to interpret that? First of all, Saturn triggering Uranus can bring some kind of unplanned or unexpected events. That's what Uranus represents. Those events might be related to home and family. That's what 4th house is all about. And they can also be related to some kind of obligations that you have together with your family, or maybe to take care of some of your family members. That's the Saturn part. And because of that, you may not have so much time for your hobbies or for your love life or just to, go outside and party, which is the meaning of fifth house. So we are connecting all of that information. The nature of the transiting planet, the nature of the natal planet, in which house is the natal planet, and also which house it rules in the chart. And when you include all of that, you will get the whole picture. Of course, there are also different types of aspects, not only conjunctions, and some of them are considered to be harmonious, others are considered to be challenging. The classical examples here are sextiles and trines for the positive aspect, and squares and oppositions for the challenging aspect. But the truth is that we have also many other aspects, and actually there are more than 15. So each of those aspects will also add some more information about how we experience this energy. Is it more harmonious? Is it more challenging? Is it surprising? Is it karmic? All of that we can understand by the nature of the aspect. And by the way, I have a whole webinar about the types of aspects in astrology. I will put the link below the video in case you're interested about this topic. The next thing which we also have to consider is how is the natal planet positioned in our chart? Is it in a harmonious, strong position, or in the birth chart this planet receives negative planets for malefic planets or is in a very weak position? This is also very important because it also reminds us about a very important general rule in astrology, which says that the transiting planets or the transits activate themes or topics which are already predefined in your natal chart. Which means that if you don't have something written in your natal chart, you won't be able to predict it. Let's say that we see that the transit Jupiter makes conjunction with your sun. For some people, this may really bring fame and glory and popularity, but in order to make that conclusion, first we have to find those indications in your birth chart that generally you're someone who can become famous. If we don't find those indications, then we cannot make this conclusion. Of course, the aspect may still be positive and can bring you opportunities, but it won't make you popular and famous. So it's always important to observe how the natal planet is positioned. If this planet has some challenging aspects from malefic planets or is in a very weak position, then when the transit triggers this planet, it activates the painful topics of this planet, which can bring more challenges or some kind of struggles. And the opposite is true as well. If your natal planet is in a very harmonious position, very strong, with great aspects with the other planets, then of course, when the transiting planets triggers your natal planets, you will have more opportunities or something great, or generally you may achieve more in terms of this natal planet. So it's very important to pay attention first to the natal chart. And one more thing that we also need to consider is whether we have a natal aspect between the same two planets which are connected in the prediction. So in our examples, we talked about Saturn making conjunction with your natal Uranus. So it means that first of all, you have to find out, do you have any aspect? It doesn't matter what the aspect is, but is there any aspect between Saturn and Uranus in your natal chart? Or with our other example, the transit Jupiter with your natal Mercury, again, find out, do you have any aspect between the same planets in your birth chart? If you have such an aspect, then the rule is that the final outcome of this situation or this event or this transit in general, will be related in some way to the nature of the natal aspect. So let's say that you have a positive aspect between Saturn and Uranus in your natal chart. Even when the transit Saturn makes challenging aspect with your natal Uranus, the final outcome might be positive for you. And unfortunately, the opposite is true as well. If you have a challenging aspect between the same planets, let's say you have a square between Saturn and Uranus in your birth chart, when the transit Saturn makes conjunction with the natal Uranus or any other aspect, it activates the natal theme, which means that you may have some challenges, you may need to destroy some of the structures that you have created, and of course that's a whole other topic. But pay attention to that, because these are very important periods. These are also the most important transits for you, especially when we talk about the outer planets. So let's say that in your natal chart you have a square between Pluto and your moon. When the transit Pluto makes conjunction with your moon, this will be an extremely important period for you. And that's true for any other combination. So don't forget about this. So I think that we have covered basically the most important. I know that it sounds like it's too much information, but that's the right approach which can show you how to interpret the transit. So let me summarize everything that we've already talked about. Basically, the transiting planet is the one which brings the energy, it brings the activation. The planet in your birth chart which receives the aspects is also the planet which receives this energy or is influenced in your life. Which areas will be affected is shown by the nature of your birth planet, the position of your birth planet in the houses, or in which house it's positioned, and also which are the houses which this planet rules. And the nature of the events or the activation depends on the type of the aspect. Whether this will be more harmonious or more challenging, the type of the aspect will show you that. And another thing which I also want to mention is that any aspect can bring you opportunities. And if you have listened to my webinar about the aspects in astrology, you already know that when we have challenging aspects, these are also the times when we can make the biggest changes in our lives. And unfortunately, very often when people have positive aspects, they might become lazy because, things are so easy for them that they don't have this inner urge or desire to struggle or to confront with others or to achieve more. So my point is that it's always important what we do with those energy and with those aspects. And I'm a true believer that we have certain level of personal will. Yes, there are some karmic events and situations and circumstances and experiences, but we always have certain amount of personal will. In my opinion, for different people, it's a different amount, but we still have the opportunity to do something about it. So don't get discouraged if you see that, for example, Saturn makes a challenging aspect in your chart. I can give you an example with me. Recently, Saturn made conjunction with my Sun, which is also in 6th house and rules 2nd house. And honestly, this is an aspect which may affect my health or can make me feel really stuck or may even bring challenges at work. Well, the truth is that I was so hardworking during this time and so motivated. And yes, I didn't have so much time for entertainment or for, even for relaxation. But honestly, I'm really happy with this period and what I have achieved during this time. So it's always important what's your expectation, also what's your reaction and what you are doing with all of those energies and aspects and transits and every other method as well. So I hope I have been helpful. I have inspired you to look from a different perspective on things. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you want to find more astrology or information about coaching, personal development, inspiration, you can go to my website, marstars.net. Thank you very much again, and I'll see you really soon.